Commander Ziegther pressed his clawed hand against the cool metal surface of the control panel. The lights from the star map cast strange shadows across his face as he studied the display. Every system in the galaxy was marked with different colors. Green meant safe territory. Yellow meant caution was needed. Red meant danger, but there was one area that glowed with a deep crimson that hurt to look at. It covered almost an entire spiral arm of the galaxy. The humans called it their space. Everyone else called it the Forbidden Zone. Ziegther had been a commander in the Valian fleet for over 40 years. He had seen wars that lasted decades. He had watched entire species bow down to Valian might, but in all those years he had never seen anything like the human zone. The door to the command center slid open with a soft hiss. General Korthval entered, his heavy footsteps echoing in the large room. The general was old, even by Valian standards. His scales had turned a deep purple with age, and his eyes held the weight of countless battles. "Still studying the human problem?" Korthval asked, moving to stand beside Ziegther. "I don't understand it," Ziegther replied, his voice filled with frustration. "We have sent over 300 probe ships into their territory in the last 50 years. None have returned, not a single one." The general nodded slowly. "The council is growing impatient. They want answers." "What answers can I give them?" Ziegther gestured at the red zone on the map. "We know almost nothing about these humans. They appeared in our galaxy less than 400 years ago. They claimed a small section of space near the outer rim. At first we ignored them. They were just another primitive species. But they grew," Korthval said quietly. "Yes, they grew. Faster than any species we have ever encountered. Within 200 years, they had spread across dozens of star systems. We decided it was time to bring them into the Confederation, by force if necessary." Ziegther touched a control, and the map zoomed in on the edge of human space. Several red dots appeared, marking the locations of failed military expeditions. The first fleet we sent consisted of 12 ships. Standard procedure for dealing with a new species. The fleet entered human space and simply vanished. No distress signals. No debris, nothing. The second fleet was larger, Korthval added. 50 ships, including 2 battlecruisers. Same result. After that, we tried different approaches. We sent diplomatic ships with messages of peace. They disappeared too. We sent scout ships with the best stealth technology in the galaxy. Gone. We even tried sending single fighters, hoping they might be too small to notice. Ziegther's voice dropped to a whisper. All gone. The 2 officers stood in silence, staring at the red zone that seemed to pulse with its own malevolent energy. "What do the survivors say?" Korthval asked. "There are no survivors," Ziegther replied. "That's what makes this so terrifying. In 3 centuries of expansion, the Valian Confederation has never encountered a species that could completely eliminate our forces without leaving a trace. But there must be some evidence. Some clue about what happened." Ziegther nodded and activated another control. The display changed to show a series of data streams and sensor readings. "We have managed to gather some information from long range. Sensors and automated probes that stayed outside the human border. What we've learned is ... disturbing." The display showed a 3-dimensional model of a human star system. Ships moved between planets like tiny dots of light. Their technology appears to be decades ahead of ours. Their ships are faster, their weapons more powerful, their defenses stronger. But that's not the strangest part. What is? They don't seem to have any weak points. Most species focus their defenses around their homeworlds and major colonies. The humans appear to have turned every single planet, moon, and asteroid into a fortress. Korthval studied the display with growing unease. "Show me their fleet numbers." The display shifted again, showing estimated ship counts for various human systems. "We estimate they have over 10,000 combat vessels. But these numbers might be low. Their ships are difficult to detect, and they seem to build new ones constantly." 10,000 ships, Korthval repeated. The entire Confederation fleet has twice that number. We should be able to overwhelm them. Should we? Ziegther asked. General, we have conquered 47 different species. Some fought harder than others, but they all followed predictable patterns. They defended their most important worlds. They tried to negotiate when defeat seemed certain. They surrendered when the cost became too high. The humans don't follow those patterns? We don't know. Every time we try to engage them, our forces simply cease to exist. It's as if they have weapons that can erase matter itself. Korthvol moved closer to the display, his eyes studying the human territory with intense focus. What about their communications? Surely we can intercept some of their messages? We've tried. Their communication systems are unlike anything we've encountered. They seem to use some form of quantum encryption that changes constantly. Our best codebreakers have spent years trying to understand even basic transmissions. But you have managed to decode something? Ziegther hesitated. A few fragments. Mostly routine communications between their patrol ships. But there was one message that our analysts found particularly disturbing. The commander activated another control, and a series of alien symbols appeared on the screen. Below them, a translation appeared in Valian script. This was transmitted from a human patrol ship near the edge of their territory. It was addressed to their fleet command. The message simply said, "Outer sensors detect Valian probe approaching Sector 7. Initiating Protocol Alpha. May they find peace in the void." Protocol Alpha? We don't know what it means. But every time we detect that phrase in their communications, one of our ships disappears shortly afterward. Korthvol stood silently for several minutes, processing the information. Finally, he spoke. The Council has made a decision. We're going to probe their defenses with a full battle fleet. 500 ships, including the new dreadnoughts. We'll approach one of their border systems and force them to respond. Ziegther felt a chill run down his spine. General, I don't think that's wise. We don't know what we're dealing with. That's exactly why we need to do this. The Council is tired of being afraid of a species we've never even seen. They want to know what makes humans so dangerous. And they want to know now. The general turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. Prepare the fleet, Commander. We launch in 72 hours. After Korthvol left, Ziegther remained alone with the star map. He stared at the red zone, wondering what secrets it held. What had happened to all those ships? What were the humans hiding in their forbidden territory? He thought about the message they had intercepted. May they find peace in the void. It sounded almost like a prayer. But what kind of species prayed? For their enemies while destroying them? Ziegther had a feeling that in 72 hours he would finally get his answers. He just wasn't sure he wanted to know what they were. The star map continued to glow, the red zone pulsing like a warning beacon. In the distance, human ships continued their patrols, unaware that the largest alien fleet in galactic history was preparing to test their defenses. The Forbidden Zone waited, keeping its secrets locked away in the darkness between the stars. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, watching the stars through the main view screen. The coffee in his mug had gone cold an hour ago, but he barely noticed. His attention was focused on the sensor readings that scrolled across the tactical display. "Anything on the long-range sensors, Amy?" he asked, turning to his communications officer. Lieutenant Amy Parker shook her head. "Nothing unusual, Captain. Just the normal background noise and a few merchant ships heading toward the inner colonies." Jake nodded and took a sip of his cold coffee. The UES Defender was a patrol ship, not much bigger than a heavy cruiser. Her crew of 37 humans had been stationed at the edge of human space for the past 6 months. It was routine work, mostly checking cargo manifests and making sure the early warning beacons were functioning properly, but Jake had been in the fleet for 12 years, and he knew that routine could change very quickly in space. "Captain," called out Ensign Billy Carter from the navigation station. "We're receiving a priority signal from Beacon 7. It's automated, but the message is marked urgent." "Put it on speaker," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with the mechanical voice of the beacon's computer system. "Warning! Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Large formation approaching from outside human space. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Classification unknown. Recommend immediate alert status. Jake felt his stomach tighten. In 12 years of service, he had never heard an automated beacon report anything like this. Amy, get me a direct line to Fleet Command. Use the quantum channel. Yes, sir. Channel open. Fleet Command, this is Captain Morrison aboard the UES Defender. We have a code red situation developing in Sector 7. Request immediate support. The response came back within seconds. Defender, this is Admiral Lisa Bennett at Fleet Command. We're reading your beacon data. How many ships are you detecting? Jake looked at the tactical display where the numbers were still climbing. Admiral, the count is over 400 and still rising. These aren't merchant vessels. The energy signatures are all wrong. They're warships. There was a long pause before Admiral Bennett responded. Understood, Captain. The fleet is being scrambled, but you're the only ship in position to make first contact. Do not engage unless fired upon. Try to establish communication first. Copy that, Admiral. We'll do our best. Jake turned to his crew. Every face on the bridge was tense, but none of them looked afraid. They were humans. They had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. All right, people. This is what we trained for, battle stations. Bring all weapon systems online. Charge the quantum cores to full power. The bridge transformed as the crew moved to their battle positions. Warning lights bathed everything in red and the hum of the ships. Engines changed pitch as power was diverted to weapons and shields. Captain, Amy called out, I'm detecting hyperspace exits. Multiple contacts dropping out of jump. Distance is 50,000 kilometers and closing. Jake watched the tactical display as red dots appeared on the screen. One by one, alien ships materialized in space. He had never seen anything like them. They were massive, angular vessels covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. Final count is 512 ships, Billy reported. They're moving into attack formation. Any response to our communication attempts? Jake asked. Nothing? Captain, they're not responding to any frequency we've tried. Jake studied the alien formation. It was clearly a war fleet, and it was heading straight for human space. There was no doubt about their intentions. Amy, record a message for transmission to Fleet Command. Tell them we have confirmed hostile contact. 500 plus alien warships, species unknown. We are engaging according to Protocol 7. Amy's fingers flew across her console. Message. Sent, Captain. Jake took a deep breath. Protocol 7 was something every human officer hoped they would never have to use. It was the standing order for situations exactly like this one. When faced with overwhelming odds, human ships were to fight with everything they had and ensure the enemy paid the maximum possible price for their aggression. All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's intercom. We are about to engage a hostile alien fleet. They outnumber us more than 500 to 1. But we are humans, and we do not surrender, we do not retreat. We make them pay for every inch of space they want to take. The crew responded with a cheer that echoed through the ship's corridors. Distance to target? Jake asked. 30,000 kilometers in closing, Billy replied. Weapon status? All systems? Charged and ready, Captain, reported Chief Petty Officer Danny Walsh from the weapons station. Quantum torpedoes are armed. Plasma cannons are hot. Point defense systems are online. Jake watched the alien fleet grow larger on the view screen. Each ship was easily 3 times the size of the Defender, and their weapons were already powering up. Energy readings spiked across the electromagnetic spectrum. They're targeting us, Captain, Amy reported. Multiple weapon locks detected. Return the favor, Jake ordered. Target their lead ship. Full spread of quantum torpedoes. The Defender shuddered as her torpedo tubes fired. 6 brilliant points of light streaked toward the alien fleet, each one carrying enough destructive power to level a small city. The aliens responded immediately. Beams of energy lanced out from their ships, striking the Defender's shields. The bridge shook violently as the protective barriers absorbed the impact. Shields holding at 60%, Danny reported. But we can't take many more hits like that. Jake watched his torpedoes reach their targets. The explosions lit up space like miniature suns, and when the light faded, the lead alien ship was gone, simply erased from existence. "Direct hit, Billy," called out target destroyed. But there were still over 500 ships left, and they were all firing now. The space around the Defender filled with energy beams and projectiles. The little human ship twisted and turned, trying to avoid the worst of the bombardment. "Shields down to 30%, Danny reported. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Jake gripped the arms of his captain's chair as another barrage struck the ship. Emergency lights flickered, and the smell of burning electronics filled. "The air got double quotes, sir. We're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet," Amy said. "They're demanding our surrender." "Tell them to go to hell," Jake replied. "Fire everything we have." The Defender's remaining weapons fired as one. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and the last of the quantum torpedoes launched toward the enemy fleet. The aliens had expected the human ship to surrender by now, and they were not prepared for such a desperate attack. 7 more alien ships exploded in brilliant fireballs. "That's 8 confirmed kills," Billy reported with satisfaction. "Not bad for a patrol ship," Jake said, but his smile faded as he looked at the damage reports. The Defender was dying. Her engines were offline, her weapons were nearly depleted, and her hull was cracked in a dozen places. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission," Amy said. "It's from Admiral Bennett. The fleet is 30 minutes out." Jake looked at the tactical display. The alien fleet was regrouping, preparing for another attack. The Defender had hurt them, but she couldn't survive another engagement. "Danny, what's the status on the quantum core?" "Still at full charge, Captain." "We could overload it if necessary," Jake nodded. Every human ship was equipped with a quantum core that could be deliberately overloaded in extreme situations. The explosion would destroy everything within 1,000 kilometers, including the ship itself. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for Protocol Final. We're going to take as many of them with us as possible." The crew worked quickly, setting up the overload sequence. When the alien fleet attacked again, the Defender would detonate like a star, taking dozens of enemy ships with her. But as Jake watched the enemy formation, he noticed something strange. The aliens were pulling back, moving away from the crippled human ship. They seemed to be afraid of something. "Amy, are you detecting anything unusual?" "Yes, Captain." "The aliens are transmitting on multiple frequencies." "I think they're arguing among themselves," Jake frowned. "Why would they retreat now?" "They had one." The Defender was helpless. Then he understood. The aliens had studied the wreckage of previous encounters. They knew what happened when human ships were cornered. They knew about the quantum cores and the massive explosions that followed. They were afraid of what the Defender might do in her. "Final moments. Well, I'll be damned," Jake said quietly. "They're scared of us." The alien fleet continued to withdraw, maintaining their distance while they waited for reinforcements. They had learned that humans were dangerous, especially when they had nothing left to lose. In the distance, Jake could see the bright points of light that marked the approach of the human fleet. Admiral Bennett was coming with everything she had. The first battle was over, but the war for human space was just beginning. Dr. Santhara walked through the corridors of the Valian research station, her mind still reeling from what she had witnessed. The battle data from the human encounter had been playing on repeat in her laboratory for the past 3 days. Every time she watched it, she discovered something new that made her more afraid. The doors to the main conference room slid open, revealing a gathering of the most important beings in the Valian Confederation. Military commanders, scientists, and political leaders sat around a massive circular table. At the head of the table sat High Commander Vorthak, the supreme leader of their entire civilization. "Dr. Santhara," the High Commander said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Present your findings." Santhara activated the holographic display in the center of the room. The image showed the battle between the single human ship and the Valian fleet. The assembled leaders watched in silence as the tiny vessel fought against impossible odds. The human vessel was called the Used Defender, she began. According to our intelligence, it was a patrol ship with a crew of 37 beings. By our standards, it should have been destroyed within minutes of the first attack. But it wasn't, said General Corthwell, who had commanded the failed expedition. No, it wasn't. The Defender managed to destroy 8 of our ships before we were forced to withdraw. 8 ships, each one carrying a crew of over 200 Valians. The room fell silent. The mathematics were simple but disturbing. 1 human ship had killed over 1,600 Valian warriors. How is this possible? Asked Admiral Zethmer, the commander of the home fleet. Our ships are larger, our weapons more powerful. We should have crushed them. Santhara changed the display to show a detailed analysis of the human weapons. Their technology is unlike anything we have encountered. These quantum torpedoes they used can apparently erase matter at the molecular level. Their shields don't just absorb energy, they seem to redirect it back at attackers. Technology alone cannot explain this, said Minister Callahan, the head of the Confederation's intelligence service. There must be something else. You're correct, Santhara replied. The technology is impressive, but it's not the most disturbing aspect of this encounter. What truly concerns me is their behavior. She activated another display, this one showing communication intercepts from the human ship. Throughout the entire battle, not once did the humans attempt to negotiate or surrender. Even when their ship was badly damaged and they were vastly outnumbered, they continued fighting. High Commander Vorthak leaned forward. All species fight when cornered. This is not unusual. With respect, sir, this is different. Listen to this. The room filled with the sound of human voices, translated into Valian. The assembled leaders heard Captain Morrison's final transmission to his crew, telling them to prepare for something called Protocol Final. What is Protocol Final? Asked General Corthwell. Santhara's expression grew grim. Based on our analysis of the ship's energy readings at the end of the battle, we believe it refers to the deliberate overload of their quantum power core. The explosion would have destroyed everything within 1,000 kilometers. They were planning to destroy themselves? Admiral Zethmer asked in disbelief. Not just themselves. They were planning to take as many of our ships as possible with them. We estimate that if they had carried out this Protocol Final, we would have lost at least 40 additional vessels. The room erupted in discussion. The concept of deliberately destroying oneself to harm an enemy was not entirely unknown in the galaxy, but it was extremely rare. Most species valued their own lives too highly to consider such actions. This explains why we withdrew, General Corthwell said quietly. Our sensors detected the energy buildup in their core. We knew what was coming. And that's when things became truly disturbing, Santhara continued. After we pulled back, additional human ships arrived. 27 vessels, led by someone called Admiral Bennett. But here's what's interesting. They didn't immediately attack us. Why not? Asked Minister Callahan. Because they were more concerned with saving their own people. They sent rescue ships to the damaged vessel and evacuated the crew. Only after their people were safe did they turn their attention to us. The display changed to show the human rescue operation. The assembled leaders watched as human ships worked quickly to save their comrades from the dying vessel. This behavior pattern is consistent with what we've observed in other human encounters, Santhara explained. They value the lives of their own people above all else, but they also seem willing to sacrifice everything to protect those lives. High Commander Vorthak stood and walked to the display. Show me the final moments of the battle. The image changed to show the human fleet in battle formation. 27 ships facing over 400 Valian vessels. The humans should have been terrified, but their communication intercepts told a different story. They're actually excited, Santhara said. Listen to this transmission from Admiral Bennett to her fleet. The room filled with a female human voice, speaking in calm, measured tones. All ships, this is Admiral Bennett, we have enemy contact. 400-plus vessels, Remember your training. Remember why we fight? Make them pay for every inch of space? She sounds eager, observed General Korthful. That's what disturbs me most, Santhara replied. They're not afraid of us. They're not intimidated by our numbers or our technology. If anything, they seem to welcome the challenge. What happened next? Asked High Commander Vorthak. We attempted to engage the human fleet, but they used tactics we've never encountered before. Instead of forming a battle line, they scattered into small groups. Each group operated independently, striking at our formations and then disappearing before we could respond. The display showed the chaotic battle that followed. Human ships darted between the larger Valian vessels like insects, striking with deadly precision and then vanishing into the void. In 17 minutes of combat, we lost 73 ships, Santhara said. The humans lost none. The silence in the room was deafening. 73 ships destroyed in less than 20 minutes. It was the worst military defeat in Valian history. How many crew members were lost? Asked Admiral Zethmar. Over 14,000, Santhara replied quietly. Minister Colohan slammed his fist on the table. This is impossible. No species in the galaxy has ever inflicted such casualties on a Valian fleet. The humans have, Santhara said simply. And based on their behavior patterns, they're just getting started. High Commander Vorthak returned to his seat. What do you recommend? We need to understand these humans better. Every piece of intelligence we've gathered suggests that they're unlike any species we've encountered. They don't fight wars the way we do. They don't think about survival the way we do. Explain. Most species fight to protect their territory or resources. They calculate the costs and benefits of warfare. They surrender when the price becomes too high. Humans appear to operate on an entirely different principle, which is, they fight to ensure their enemy cannot win, even if it means destroying themselves in the process. The implications of this statement hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Valian Confederation had built its empire on the assumption that all species would eventually submit when faced with overwhelming force. The humans seemed to be immune to this logic. We need more information, said Minister Colohan. We need to understand their military structure, their technology, their psychology. I've already begun working on that, Santhara replied. But what I've discovered so far is deeply troubling. Show us. The display changed to show intelligence gathered from various sources. Intercepted communications, sensor data, and analysis of human behavior patterns. Every human colony is fortified. Every civilian is trained for combat. Every ship is equipped with these quantum cores that can be overloaded. They haven't just built a military, they've built an entire civilization around the concept of warfare. Why? Asked General Korthful. Because they're afraid, Santhara replied, but not afraid of dying, they're afraid of losing. And they've decided that the best way to avoid losing is to make sure that anyone who attacks them pays such a terrible price that victory becomes meaningless. High Commander Vorthak studied the data with growing unease. What does this mean for the Confederation? It means that conquering human space may be possible, but it will cost us everything. They've turned their entire species into a weapon, designed to destroy anyone who tries to destroy them. The room fell silent as the full implications became clear. The humans had created the ultimate deterrent, not superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but the promise of mutual destruction, on a scale that would make victory indistinguishable from defeat. We need to reconsider our approach, High Commander Vorthak said finally. Perhaps these humans are not meant to be conquered, Dr. Santhara nodded. That may be the wisest course of action. Sometimes the best way to win a war is not to fight it at all, but even as she spoke, she knew that the Confederation leadership would not accept this advice easily. They had never encountered a species they couldn't defeat, and the idea of backing down from a challenge was foreign to their nature. The humans had created something new in the galaxy, a species that was more dangerous in defeat than in victory. Colonel Rick Davis sat in the underground command center beneath the ruins of Geneva City on Earth. The room was filled with screens showing star maps, fleet positions, and intelligence reports from across human space. He had been awake for 36 hours straight, coordinating the defense against what everyone knew was coming. The Confederation was planning something big. Every intelligence report pointed to the same conclusion. They were massing fleets across their territory, calling in ships from every corner of their empire. The failed probe had only made them more determined to solve what they called the human problem. "Colonel," called out Major Helen Foster from her station near the communications array, "we're receiving a transmission from the outer colonies. The Confederation has established a staging area in the Kepler system, just outside our border." Rick walked over to look at the data. The numbers were staggering. Over 2,000 alien ships had gathered in one location. It was the largest military force ever assembled in the galaxy. "They're not taking any chances this time," he said quietly. "Sir, we also have a report from Intelligence Section. They've managed to intercept some Confederation communications. It appears they've been studying our tactics and technology." Rick frowned. What have they learned? Helen activated a display showing translated alien communications. "They know about the quantum cores. They know about Protocol Final, and they're trying to develop countermeasures." "Let them try," Rick said. "They still don't understand what they're really fighting." The truth was that human military doctrine was built on principles that most alien species found impossible to comprehend. Every human child learned about the wars of old Earth, where desperate soldiers held impossible positions against overwhelming odds. They learned about concepts like honor, sacrifice, and the idea that some things were worth dying for, but more importantly, they learned about the final protocol. "Major, bring up the colony defense reports." Rick ordered. The display changed to show the status of human colonies across their territory. Each one showed the same pattern. Military installations, civilian shelters, and at the center of every major settlement, a quantum reactor capable of sterilizing the entire planet. "The aliens think they're fighting a war," Rick said to the assembled staff officers. "They don't realize they're walking into a trap that we've been building for 300 years. Captain Steve Martinez entered the command center, his uniform still bearing the scorch marks from a recent patrol mission. His ship, the UES Vengeance, had just returned from the border systems where alien scout ships had been probing their defenses. "Colonel, I have the report you requested," Steve said, saluting. "We encountered 3 Confederation scout ships near the Tau Ceti system. They were conducting detailed scans of our defense platforms. Did you engage them?" "Yes, sir." "All 3 ships were destroyed, but not before they transmitted their data back to their fleet." Rick nodded. This was expected. The humans wanted the aliens to see their defenses. They wanted them to know exactly what they were facing. What did they learn? Steve activated a portable display. "They now know that every major asteroid in our border systems has been hollowed out and turned into a weapons platform. They know that our merchant ships are actually disguised warships. And they know that every human colony has enough firepower to destroy a battle fleet." "Good," Rick said. "Let them see how deep the rabbit hole goes." The rabbit hole was deeper than any alien species could imagine. Humans had spent centuries preparing for this moment. Every aspect of their civilization had been designed around one simple principle: make the cost of conquest so high that victory would be meaningless. Major Foster received another transmission and immediately brought it to Rick's attention. "Colonel, we have a priority message from Earth Defense Command. The President wants to speak with you directly." Rick walked to a secure communication terminal and activated the quantum encryption system. The face of President Linda Walsh appeared on the screen, her expression grave. "Colonel Davis, I've been reviewing the latest intelligence reports. How long do we have?" "Madam President, our best estimates suggest the Confederation will launch their main assault within 72 hours. They're bringing everything they have and our response? All colonies have been notified. Every ship is in position. We're as ready as we'll ever be." President Walsh was quiet for a moment. "Rick, I want you to understand something. If we implement the final protocol on a system-wide scale, there's no going back. We're talking about the potential destruction of entire worlds. I understand, Madam President. But if we don't stop them here, they'll roll over every human colony in the galaxy. Sometimes the only way to save something is to be willing to destroy it. The decision is mine to make, Walsh said. But I need to know that our people understand what they're being asked to do. Rick thought about the thousands of human families living on the border worlds. Children who had grown up knowing that their homes might become battlefields. Parents who had taught their kids to operate emergency shelters and quantum reactors. Entire communities that had accepted the possibility of sacrifice for the greater good. They understand, Madam President. Every human in our territory knows the price of freedom. They're willing to pay it. After the call ended, Rick gathered his senior staff for a final briefing. The room filled with the faces of men and women who had dedicated their lives to this moment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. 300 years of preparation come down to the next few days. The Confederation is bringing their entire military force against us. Over 2,000 ships carrying enough firepower to crack planets. What are our orders, sir? Asked Captain Martinez. We fight exactly the way we trained. Every engagement follows the same principle: make them pay more than they can afford. If they want a system, they have to be willing to lose 50 ships to take it. If they want a planet, they have to be willing to watch it burn. Major Foster raised her hand. Colonel, what about civilian casualties? Rick's expression grew somber. Everyone in human space is a volunteer. Every colony was established with full knowledge of what might be required. Our people aren't just willing to fight for their freedom, they're willing to die for it if necessary. This was the reality that alien species couldn't understand. Humans had created a civilization where every individual was prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. Not because they wanted to die, but because they understood that some things were more important than individual survival. Sir, said Major Foster, we're receiving reports from our deep space monitors. The Confederation fleet is moving. They're heading for the Centauri system. Rick studied the tactical display. Centauri was one of humanity's oldest colonies, home to over 50 million people. It was also one of their most heavily defended systems. Send a message to Governor Sarah Johnson at Centauri. Tell her the package is being delivered. The package was code for the final protocol authorization. If the system was about to fall, Governor Johnson had the authority to activate every quantum reactor in the system simultaneously. The explosion would destroy everything within 10 light years, including any attacking fleet. Colonel, asked Captain Martinez, do you really think they'll go through with it? Rick looked at the young officer. Martinez was new to the command staff. Having only recently been promoted after his actions at the border, he still had some illusions about the nature of war. Captain, let me tell you about Governor Johnson. She lost her husband and 2 sons in the Rigel incident 15 years ago. She spent every day since then preparing for this moment. She won't hesitate. The Rigel incident had been a wake-up call for humanity. A small alien raiding party had managed to slip past their defenses and attack a civilian colony. The attack had been repelled, but not before hundreds of innocent people had been killed. The response had been swift and decisive. The entire raiding fleet had been tracked down and destroyed. But more importantly, the incident had convinced every human colony to accept the final protocol. They would rather die free than live as slaves? Sir, we're receiving updates from the fleet commanders, Major Foster reported. Admiral Bennett is requesting permission to engage the Confederation. Advance guard. Tell her to proceed. And remind her of the engagement rules. No prisoners. No mercy. Make them understand that every inch of human space will cost them blood. This was the doctrine that had kept humanity free for 3 centuries. Every battle was fought with the same intensity, regardless of the odds. Human ships didn't retreat, unless ordered to do so. Human soldiers didn't surrender. Human colonies didn't submit. The result was a reputation that preceded them across the galaxy. Most species had learned to avoid human territory entirely. The few that had tested human resolve had paid a terrible price, but the Confederation was different. They had never encountered a species they couldn't eventually conquer. Their pride and their confidence in their own superiority had blinded them to the reality of what they were facing. "Colonel," said Captain Martinez, "may I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Do you think we can actually win this?" Rick considered the question carefully. "Captain, that depends on how you define victory. Can we defeat their fleet and send them running back to their own territory?" Ambassador Veltar had volunteered for what everyone considered a suicide mission. The Valian Confederation's most experienced diplomat was now sitting in a small shuttle, approaching the heart of human space. His destination was Earth itself, the homeworld of the species that had brought the galaxy's greatest empire to its knees. The shuttle was escorted by 6 human warships, their weapons trained on his vessel but not firing. It was a strange experience for Veltar. In his 300 years of diplomatic service, he had never approached a world where he was more likely to be killed than welcomed. "Alien vessel, this is Captain Linda Torres of the UES Guardian. You are cleared for approach to Earth orbital station. Any deviation from the assigned flight path will result in your immediate destruction," Veltar responded carefully. "Understood, Captain Torres. I am following your navigation instructions exactly." The journey to Earth had taken him through 12 human star systems. What he had seen along the way had shaken him to his core. Every planet was a fortress. Every moon held weapons capable of destroying fleets. Every asteroid had been hollowed out and turned into a military base, but most disturbing of all were the people. Humans of every age went about their daily lives while carrying weapons and emergency equipment. Children played war games that would have been considered military training in most civilizations. Elderly humans operated defense systems with the casual efficiency of career soldiers. The entire species had been militarized. The shuttle docked at Earth's primary orbital station, and Veltar was escorted through corridors lined with armed guards. Every human he passed looked at him with the same expression. Not hatred, but a cold calculation of how much trouble he might cause and how quickly they could deal with him. He was brought to a conference room. Deep within the station, the walls were made of some kind of metal that hummed with energy, and Veltar realized he was sitting inside what was essentially a weapon. Even the diplomatic facilities were designed for war. The door opened, and a human female entered. She was tall, for her species, with graying hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. Her uniform bore the insignia of a general, and she moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. "Ambassador Veltar," she said, taking a seat across from him. "I am General Sandra Walsh, Commander of Earth Defense Force. You requested this meeting. I assume you have something important to say." Veltar studied the human general. She was exactly what he had expected based on the intelligence reports. No wasted motion, no unnecessary words, and an aura of barely contained violence that made his skin crawl. "General Walsh, I come here representing the Valian Confederation. We wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict before it escalates further." "Terms?" Walsh raised an eyebrow. "Ambassador, you seem to be confused about something. There is no conflict. Your people attacked our territory, we defended ourselves, end of story. But surely we can reach some kind of agreement. The Confederation is willing to offer compensation for our mistakes. We could establish trade relationships, perhaps even a mutual defense treaty." Welsh leaned back in her chair, and for the first time she almost smiled. "Ambassador, let me explain something to you. Your people have been studying us for months, trying to figure out what makes us dangerous. Would you like to know the answer?" Veltar nodded, despite the fear growing in his chest. "We're dangerous because we don't want anything from you. We don't want your territory. We don't want your resources. We don't want to rule your people or convert them to our way of thinking. All we want is to be left alone." "That seems reasonable," Veltar said carefully. "Does it?" "Because your confederation has spent the last 1,000 years conquering every species it encounters. You've built an empire on the assumption that everyone can be bought, threatened, or defeated. But you can't buy people who don't want what you're selling. You can't threaten people who aren't afraid to die. And you can't defeat people who consider victory and defeat to be the same thing. Walsh stood and walked to a wall display that showed the current positions of both fleets. The Confederation forces still outnumbered the humans by more than 3-1. Ambassador, I'm going to show you something that your intelligence services have been trying to understand for 3 centuries. The display changed to show a recording from 50 years earlier. It showed a human colony under attack by an unknown alien species. The defense was hopeless from the beginning. The aliens had overwhelming firepower and numerical superiority, but as Veltar watched, something impossible happened. Instead of surrendering, the human colonists activated some kind of weapon that destroyed everything in the system. The attacking fleet, the planet, even the star itself simply ceased to exist. The colony of New Hope, Walsh said quietly. 40,000 humans, men, women, children. They chose to die rather than submit to conquest. Veltar stared at the empty space where a star system had once existed. They destroyed themselves. They destroyed their enemies. The fact that they died in the process was just the price they were willing to pay. Walsh activated another recording. This one showed a human fleet badly outnumbered and surrounded by enemy ships. Instead of trying to escape, the human vessels charged directly into the alien formation, their quantum cores overloading in a chain reaction that eliminated both fleets. The Battle of Kepler Prime, Walsh explained. Admiral Robert Kim and his entire task force, they were facing a force 5 times their size. Rather than retreat and allow the enemy to attack civilian targets, they chose to ensure that the enemy could never threaten anyone again. More recordings followed. Human settlements that chose destruction over occupation. Human ships that rammed enemy vessels rather than surrender. Human soldiers who fought to the last man and then activated suicide devices to deny their enemies. Any victory? This is madness, Veltar whispered. No, Ambassador, this is freedom. This is what happens when a species decides that some things are worth any price. Walsh returned to her seat and stared directly at the alien diplomat. Every human child learns these stories. Every human adult accepts that they might be called upon to make the same choice. We have built our entire civilization around the principle that we would rather cease to exist than live as slaves. But you could have so much more, Veltar protested. The Confederation could offer you technology, resources, access to thousands of worlds. In exchange for what? Our independence? Our freedom to make our own choices? Ambassador, you still don't understand. We don't want to be part of your empire. We don't want to be junior partners or protected allies. We want you to leave us alone. Walsh activated one final display. This one showed real-time sensor data from across human space, every human world. Every human ship, every human facility showed the same energy signature. Those are quantum reactors, Walsh explained. Every single one is armed and ready. If your Confederation decides to press this attack, if your fleets cross into our territory with the intent to conquer, every human world will activate these devices simultaneously. Veltar stared at the display in horror. There were hundreds of signals representing billions of human lives. You would commit genocide against your own species? We would deny you the victory you seek. Tell me, Ambassador, what good is conquering human space if there are no humans left to rule? What value is there in capturing our worlds if they're nothing but radioactive debris? The terrible logic of the human position became clear to Veltar. They had created the ultimate deterrent. Not superior weapons or defensive positions, but the promise that victory would be indistinguishable from total defeat. But your people would all die, he said weakly. Yes, they would. But they would die. Free. And your Confederation would have to explain to the rest of the galaxy why they committed the resources of their entire civilization to sterilize dozens of star systems. How long do you think your empire would survive the economic and political consequences of such an action? Walsh stood again and walked to the viewport that showed the vast expanse of space beyond Earth. Ambassador, I'm going to give you something to take back to your leaders. Not a threat, but a promise. If the Confederation withdraws its fleets and agrees to leave human space alone, this conflict ends here. We go back to our lives, you go back to yours. And if we don't withdraw? Then you'll discover that humans have one more characteristic that your intelligence services missed. We keep our promises. Walsh handed Veltar a data crystal. This contains detailed sensor readings of what happened to the Proxima Centauri system 23 years ago. A small Confederation fleet decided to test our resolve by attacking one of our outer colonies. Veltar looked at the crystal with dread. What happened? The colony fought for 6 hours against overwhelming odds. When defeat became inevitable, they activated their final protocol. The explosion sterilized 4 star systems and created a dead zone that still exists today. The ambassador's hands shook as he held the crystal. How many of your people died? 7 million. How many of yours? The entire fleet, over 30,000 soldiers. And that was just one colony, Ambassador. We have over 200 worlds. Each one prepared to make the same choice. Do the mathematics yourself, Veltar understood. If the Confederation pushed this conflict to its conclusion, they might technically win.